I so appreciate you being here for our forum tonight. We have a lot to discuss and want to give plenty of opportunity for dialogue and open connection. My name is Michelle Venegas Matula. I am the DRUUMM secretary for our steering committee, and we will be discussing some changes to our election terms, as well as some opportunities for leadership coming up. I will be the co-facilitator along with Tomi. I'll let Tomi introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tomi Fatunde, and I'm one of your vice presidents. We invite you to share your name, your pronouns, lands you reside on, anything that you'd like to share with the rest of the group today in the chat. And I will say that my pronouns are she and her, and I reside in Dallas, Texas, Caddo lands traditionally. Feel free to make yourself comfortable, whether you want to be on camera or not. If you need to, whatever way is most comfortable for you to interact. So if you prefer the chat, that's fine. If you want to speak, feel free to raise your hand and we will check in with you. And of course, wherever you are physically, we welcome your presence in a way that is comfortable. So here are some potential suggestions or considerations on the slide here. But thank you again for joining us. We look forward to this evening.
And please do not hesitate to use the chat if there's anything that you need that would make this more accessible to you. I want to reintroduce myself because we've had a couple of people come in, but also because I did not share my pronouns earlier. I use she and Aja pronouns. I am Michelle Venegas Matula, residing in the land of the Coahuiltecan, Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, and Comanche peoples, also known as Austin, Texas. And again, I'm the secretary for DRUUMM. So if we can go back to the purpose of the forum slide. So the reason why we're gathered together today is to get a chance to explain and discuss and get the feedback from our members on a proposal to change the terms on some of our elected steering committee members, based on what our bylaws have for us. And also to help prepare our members for voting on these new proposed terms at our annual meeting that will happen during General Assembly. And it also is an opportunity for us to engage our members in different opportunities that we have coming up, that we would love your support and get a chance to work together on some different projects. And also just to have an open dialogue between our members in the steering committee and to help continue building our beloved community. So thank you again for being here. For our meeting flow, as we started with welcome and introductions, and Tomi mentioned some of the centering to just, be comfortable in your body and do what you need to be able to be present with us. And then we'll do a chalice lighting. We'll go through our code of conduct, which is also kind of our covenant. We will discuss our steering committee and staff. We will talk about that change in the elected positions, what we're proposing. We'll have an opportunity for questions and feedback. Then we'll move into our leadership opportunities and get to talk about those in detail. We have several of our steering committee members, some that are chairing some of those different committees that have the opportunities. So we'll get a chance to speak directly to them and have more time for questions and answers, get to share with you some of our upcoming events, and then we'll close out. We're scheduled till 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, which is 6:30 Pacific. All right, so we can go to, we'll have Jolanda do our chalice lighting today.
Hello, beloveds. My name is Jolanda Walter. I serve as your DRUUMM admin. And today's chalice lighting comes from the promise and the practice. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is the chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared path, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals.
Thank you so much, Jolanda. Now we'll pass it to Karen for our DRUUMM Code of Conduct.
Great, thank you. Now, if we could get the slides back up, you are on it. Thank you so much, Jolanda. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Lynn. I am the DRUUMM Communications Coordinator. And on the subject of communications, we as members of DRUUMM strive to communicate with each other and act with each other according to a set of shared values and principles. This is our covenant. And so I'd just like to take a moment to read that. And I've invited Shada Johnston to help me read it. So we'll just take turns going over the following agreements that are on the slide. We communicate in ways that foster a community of respect, safety, intellectual growth, and vibrant spirituality.
Share responsibility for creating meaningful and effective time together.
Share space and airtime by moving up and moving back so everyone has an opportunity to contribute.
Noticing and naming what you are experiencing, feeling, and need, using I statements.
Take responsibility for intention and impact.
Honor confidentiality where appropriate, and if unsure, please ask for permission to share information publicly.
Be conscious of our time together. Help stick to it or negotiate for more. For those who are not fully present or are late to honor, we ask you to honor our group process, and we will do our best to catch you up. Thank you. Are there any questions about this before we move forward? Okay, back to you, Michelle. Thank you, Shada.
Yeah, so to get us started, we wanted to share a little bit of how our organization is structured. This is kind of the overall view of how our leadership works. We take the needs and direction from our BIPOC, UU folks and DRUUMM members, and then it goes all the way down to our member leaders, our community minister, our administrator, and which are our staff, and then our steering committee. And Karen is going to introduce y'all to our current steering committee.
Okay, we are led by Esperanza, our president, and Tomi, whom you've already met, our first vice president. Reverend Carol is our second vice president. Our treasurer is Kate. Michelle, who is one of our facilitators, you've already met, is our secretary. Reverend Burtis is our GA coordinator. You've already met me. I'm the communications director. Our outreach coordinator was Nico Van Ostrand. However, they have recently stepped down with our blessing to accept a position at the UUA. And Reverend Michael is our UUA liaison. And our we have two staff members, the Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons, our community minister, and our fabulous Yolanda Walter, our administrative consultant.
Thank you, Karen. And I wanted to mention Yolanda is here supporting us today with our tech. So thank you so much. Now we can dive into it. Our bylaws and elected positions review. I do want to say I appreciate so much y'all being here because we could not do this work without your presence and your feedback. And this is very much a way that we get to build our beloved community and get to decide how we are with each other. So part of that is with our bylaws. And in our bylaws that are posted on our website, it mentions that we need to have a bylaws review every 3 years. This has not actually occurred, but we're in the process of starting that. Whenever we were taking a look, though, we did notice that there was some discrepancies. So next slide. So whenever you elected us into this very, what's the word I want to use? Blessed role to lead DRUUMM. All positions, according to the bylaws, should be 3-year terms. And in our structure in the steering committee, we have it struck. There is 2 portions to it because we have the executive committee, which is president, first vice president, second vice president, treasurer, secretary, and then the whole steering committee then includes the GA coordinator, communications director, outreach, and our UUA liaison. So next slide. Unfortunately, what we saw was that the way that we had structured our elections for the past couple of years, it was inconsistent with what the bylaws were saying. So last year, some of our steering committee members were actually specifically the executive committee had been elected to 2-year terms instead of the full 3 years. Part of the reason that this happened is because we have had at times resignations that, because of life circumstances, things that had happened. We also had a death in our steering committee just a couple years ago with the passing of Matthew Taylor. So we were having to fill positions and before their full term was complete. And because of this, I think it caused some inconsistencies with how we were doing our full elections. So next slide, please. And then the other problem we were having was that too many of the positions were ending at the same time. And this would put a lot of pressure on our nominating committee to find people that could lead, could take on these roles. These roles are extremely fulfilling, but they also require our time and attention. And so whenever we were having to find multiple people at the same time, it was getting more difficult to be able to have a full steering committee and a full slate for our elections. So next slide. So here's our proposal for to be able to be congruent with our bylaws. We are going to extend and stagger terms And for one role, we are actually going to cut back 1 year, but this is basically the lineup. It's President with Esperanza. She was elected to serve until 2024, and we're going to be asking to extend that to 2025. Tommy being first vice president, her term will be up in 2024, and hoping that then we'll move into president-elect role, which she would take on the role of president the following year. The second vice president, Reverend Carol, was elected for her term to end in 2025. We're asking for extension to 2026. Our treasurer will be rolling off the steering committee this June. My term as secretary was also one of those that was scheduled to end in 2025, but asking for an extension to 2026. Our GA coordinator, Reverend Vertis, will his term will be up in 2025. Karen, our communications coordinator, is the one that we're shortening up because to help us stagger. So instead of completing her term in 2025, she'll be completing it in 2024 with the opportunity to run again for another 3 years. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Our outreach coordinator is currently vacant, as Karen mentioned. But that particular role would end in 2026. So we would be looking for somebody to fill that through those 2 years and then have the opportunity to run again for another 3 years. And then Reverend Michael, our UUA liaison, his term ends in 2025. So next slide. Oh, if you could go back one again, I wanted to point out. So basically all the ones with the asterisks are the ones that we are going to be asking at our General Assembly annual meeting for a change in their terms. Okay, next. So this is kind of what it looks like to help us kind of overlap those roles. So instead of having to look for, we were having 4 or 5 people that were going to be rolling off the board at the same time. This actually helps to, then we only will need to look for 3 people at a time each year to fill those roles. So as part of our bylaws, members can serve up to 2 terms, so that's 6 years total. If a resignation occurs within a year and a half or less of the term is left, whoever is appointed or carries on or is elected to that role, that year to year and a half does not count towards 6 years. If the resignation occurs for with more than a year and a half of the term remaining, then it would count toward that person's 6 years. So what that looks like is if, let's give the example of our outreach coordinator. They only completed less than a year of their 3-year term. So the next person that takes on that role, it would count as them having fulfilled, if we are able to fill it soon, it would be the 3 years at that when that term is complete in 2026. So we're not proposing any changes to the current bylaws for this particular vote. So we don't need to, we're not looking to change any of the ways that we're governing, for our governing of our organization. The vote is going to strictly be on those that are currently on the steering committee that there'll be a change on their term, on the length of their term. But like I said, our bylaws, we are putting together a bylaws committee to review our bylaws and see if they have any further suggestions or changes. And that will happen. I'll talk a little bit more because that is one of the opportunities for volunteers. But the hope is that we'll vote on this at the General Assembly in June. And then for the bylaws committee, that will be in, if we could go to the next slide, because that kind of explains a little bit. So we're having this forum for any questions that you may have on these changes on the terms. We're hoping to hear any feedback or suggestions, or if you have questions, and wrap up that opportunity for feedback in May, so that we can have we can finalize the agenda for our annual meeting, so that all our members can vote in June on those terms. And as far as the bylaws review, that we're hoping the committee will start working late spring, early summer, and then give us any suggestions by December of this year. So now is the opportunity, if you have any feedback or questions for those that are not watching live and are watching this at a later time, please email us at info@druumm.org. That is our email address that Jolanda will make sure to get any information, feedback, or questions that you may have directly to the steering committee, so that we can connect with you and hear what you have to say. So I'll pass it to Tomi to lead us in this next section for leadership and volunteer opportunities.
So we have a few potential positions, ways to get involved. Next slide, please. So here are a few of them. So the executive committee or steering committee, the nominating committee for positions on the executive committee or steering committee, the bylaws review work group, DRUUMM Village at General Assembly will need a planning committee, and then the planning committee for the Continental Conference, which we are planning for 2025. So Reverend Vertus has some additional information on the DRUUMM Village. I think that's also at the top of the next slide. I hope. Nope. Let me go back up. I think it's on the next slide, but these are, as Michelle mentioned, some of the positions that the nominating committee is seeking to fill.
Tomi, I can speak on this if you would like.
Sure.
Okay, so for the nominating committee, as secretary, I'm the chair of this committee, and Ayana Coffey is going to be joining me on this committee. We typically have two folks from the steering committee and a couple of DRUUMM members to help us seek out people that would be interested in serving in this capacity and serving on our steering committee. So this coming year, we're looking for a treasurer for 3 years. Our current treasurer will be around and help with that process to have a smooth transition, because it is a lot of information and we want to make it as easy as possible. And Kate has offered to help with that. Our outreach coordinator, that's the position that Nico was in, and so it is going to be a 2-year term because of the early resignation. The outreach coordinator just helps with our members, and we have a membership orientation every quarter. and there's other opportunities to help with our gatherings. But basically to be that, one of the touch points for our members and to bring in those that may not know about DRUUMM yet. And then our communications coordinator, it's a 3-year term. Karen Lynn is currently serving in that role, has done a fantastic job. But there is the opportunity that she may continue with this role, but we want to be open, and if anybody's interested in that, we can have a conversation as well.
So one of the other areas in which we're looking for people is the Bylaws Review Working Group. So we're seeking 2 to 3 members, and Reverend Carol, our other vice president, will be steering that group to do our review of the bylaws. And that group, hopefully we would like to convene that in the next couple of months, and then we anticipate you meeting, potentially up till December of this year, and then the group would make their proposals, and those would kind of be in the under consideration for the 2025 election. And then for Drum Village at General Assembly, which is virtual this year, we are looking for people for the planning committee. And actually, I'll let Vertus talk about this. He'll do a better job than I will.
Yes. So Drum Village, Reverend Vertus Robinson, he, him, or they pronouns, your General Assembly coordinator. This is a different GA in that it is online, but it is online by choice. The first online one, the first virtual one, it was not by choice. The second one was not by choice either, but this one is. So the grid the schedule for GA is different this year. It's more compact. It starts a day later, or a morning later, or something like that. There's no Wednesday, it starts on Thursday. And there are no in-person workshops. They're all online, all on demand. So we have about 6 slots that we can program that is outside of the programming that is now jammed into a virtual GA. So with those, similar to last year, a closing and an opening worship service. So we need a planning committee for those worship services to plan them and to lead us into worship. So worship leaders, and to plan those. We also have 4 sessions or 4 blocks that we are designating for caucusing. And one of the blocks will be regional caucuses, and that's the Northeast, Southeast. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to regionalize them, but last year it was those regional caucuses were only in person. Now everything's virtual, so hopefully there'll be more opportunities to connect with people in your region that are members of DRUUMM. And then identity based, and that goes with racial, ethnic lines, as well as those who are in between them as well. And adoptees I think is one of the those, as well as seminarians and queer folk of color. And so those are going to be in their own sessions. And also we need some content creators. This is a great opportunity because it is going to be virtual to do some very creative things with video. Everything doesn't have to be live. We can, so content creators, especially particularly music. Music is really hard to do over Zoom live. It's just really difficult to do. And so looking for content creators. So that's Drum Village. And please sign up as soon as you can so that we can get working on planning and have a great virtual GA village.
All right. So we are hoping next year, I'm just getting used to thinking of 2025 as next year, but we would like to have an in-person conference. We're calling it a continental conference with DRUUMM members from all across the continent. So we are getting together a planning committee for this. And, we imagine there'll be, maybe 2 or 3 people that are sort of take sort of the biggest load on that committee, but the number of members on the committee is open. I think we'll have, several more, the more the better, up to a certain point. And some of the areas that we anticipate needing help with are the logistics, marketing, coordinating speakers and sessions, establishing the budget. We've had a few sort of initial conversations about where this might be, but even like selecting the place might happen after the committee is put together. So we would love to have people who are interested, whether that's you or someone you know. Feel free to spread the word. And I think that's sort of the last slide on the currently open areas needing help. So please, we have the link for the interest form both on the slide and in the chat, and feel free to complete that or share it with somebody if you think they might be interested or might be good for it. All right, so I guess that's sort of the opportunities now. I'd like to take this time to invite any questions, anything that whether on the information that was presented specifically, or if there are questions that you came to this forum with, anything that we haven't addressed, or anything that you want to say about bylaws. We'd love to hear it.